Hey everyone, it's Carrie with Alice Eats the Apple. All right, so you know how I told you guys, I don't know, video before last or even before that, maybe when I spoke with Bill Spicer, how I'm really intrigued by this idea, I don't know, just UFOs and technology and spirituality and where everything comes together. That's what the show is about today. So you guys know both my guests. I have Patrick de Haan here in the studio with me, and we have Bill Spicer calling in, and here we are. So just to recap, Bill showed me, he reached out to me and said, okay, I know how to video craft. He taught me how to do it, and lo and behold, I have all these things that I've gotten, and Bill has sort of walked me, not sort of, he's held my hand, walked me through this. This is what you're getting. This is what this means. And, but now what? Now that we can see it, and now that we know they're there, we bring in Mr. de Haan, who actually connects with the beings above us that are there. And that's what the show's about. So welcome, guys.
Great to be here.
Yep, good to be here. Glad to be here.
Well, now, Bill, you found the Joyride show and our show through watching Patrick. Is that right?
Correct. You had him on earlier this year, and I think it was this spring, he had been a guest speaker, after going to a conference in Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken. It was there, and he was on a program, and then I started Googling his name, and then your show showed up. And I watched it intensely because everything he said was exactly like my own experiences, or, as it built up. And so I found your website, and then that's how I reached out to you, never imagining that we'd be doing a show like this, because that this is it. This is what I've been hoping for. What I was shown would happen in the fall. We're starting to go into spring, from the spring and summer, and now we're into fall. And this is what I saw in a dream about 3 to 4 years ago. I actually saw that we were going to start having conversations, and I was going to help introduce and tie together the UFO craft with our consciousness and how that works. And Patrick uses channeling. He calls it channeling. And I've read his book recently that he published, and I've got numerous things in it that I can identify with. And he explains it so well in a short, crisp manner. He has the ability to do that, and he did an excellent job.
Thank you. So
you just did the intro. Thank you. That was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think, now we back up. We had you on the show. Tiffanie and I had you on the show the first time in April of 2018.
Yes.
And I don't think I got it. I mean, I thought I had it. I thought I understood, but I don't think I did. I went back and I listened to the show, parts of it, and I was just blown away at all of the things I didn't ask, all of the things we didn't quite get in that show, or I didn't get. And now that we're here, now that we see these craft, I can't wait to hear what you have to say. I actually can't wait to hear the two of you talk.
Well, I'll go first a little bit, and Bill, this will probably prime Bill's pump, and then he can go from there. Mm-hmm. What he adds to this process of communicating with or becoming aware of alien extraterrestrial visitors is the visual component that is essential for so many people. And this goes back to many of the things I've talked about in my channeling, independent of alien extraterrestrials, but bleeds into the area quite a bit. The human ability to telepathically communicate. This is a real challenge for most human beings, and I'm referring to the human beings even aware of the possibility that it might exist. There are many humans that just are not aware of the topic or the subject. It would be like discussing, eggplant cultivation with me. I don't know anything about it. I don't even eat it very often. But the people that are aware of it struggle because from a very early age, earlier than any of us remember, we're trained to focus on the 5 physical senses. An example I would draw would be someone that has 2 hands and 5 fingers that they can use more or less normally. Well, we have right-handed people, we have left-handed people. Can a person learn how to use a knife, a fork, or a spoon with their non-dominant hand? Of course they can. Do they? No. So when someone is 5 years old, can that person make the effort and train themselves to eat equally well with a spoon or use a knife and a fork reversed or with one hand or the other hand? Yes, they can very easily. What happens if you try and do it with a 10-year-old or 15-year-old? And by the time a person reaches adulthood and then on, it becomes a real struggle. Not because they can't, but they don't want to. This is exactly what happens with telepathic communication or channeling. As we get older and older, we lose the habit. So for many people, it takes more and more of an effort to get back into it. It doesn't take as much of an effort as we think it does. What's the real challenge is to get over the hump of just accepting that it's possible, that it exists.
Right.
We all do it all the time, but we call it intuition, or we call it a hunch. But telepathic communication is actually much easier than a language because it doesn't require speaking, and there's no reading or writing involved. Another example I would draw for many people would be anyone that has been exposed to or taught how to speed read. Well, what's going on with speed reading? What the speed reading process attempts to teach the reader is how to clump words, and eventually, if they get good enough at it, entire sentences or complete lines across a page in a book. Well, that approximates telepathic communication, and it's something that we can all learn how to do. But we accept that because the telepathic communication is tied to the words and the characters and the letters that are used to make the words that are typed on a page. So it's anchored in something that we can touch, back to the 5 senses. When I talk about telepathic communication, we don't need the book. We don't need the piece of paper. The information comes faster and more accurately than it can come with words. This is what alien extraterrestrials do, and this is what they do with us, and this is what we do with them. So when somebody says, hey, I want to take photographs, and Bill explains his expertise, how do you do it? What they're doing by desiring to take a picture is sending the telepathic message to the aliens, hey, we want to take a picture of you. They say, okay, we'll come down and we'll hike up our dress so you can take a picture. And that's what they do.
Yep.
So they
Yes.
come moving over into the area to make sure that when they decloak or when they uncover or they open their jacket or they pull their dress up or pull their pants down or whatever it is that they're doing symbolically to make themselves visible so we can photograph them, it's done telepathically.
Go back and watch on the Joyride Show if you want to learn more about Patrick and how his process works. I believe it's show number 91. It was April of 2018. So the Joyride Show.
I'm glad you didn't ask me that question.
Yeah.
I looked. I cheated. No, but you channel Zebulon, and and what group is he with?
He's from Canopus.
That's right. So we typically know the Greys, the Arcturans, the Pleiades.
Hold on, back up.
Yep.
Using the word Greys is a very bad word. In other words, Grey refers to a physical appearance group. It says nothing about the civilization, the culture, and who the people are and what they think. So we will say tall gray, short gray, and whatever, but we're talking about planets that revolve around stars that have nothing to do with each other. It's the same thing with humans. We say, oh, the whites. Which whites? Whites from Russia? whites
Nordic,
from Chile.
German,
Right.
Yeah.
Which
Right.
whites? So when we say grays, we say which grays? Zebulon is a name this alien extraterrestrial picked to tell me because he liked it. And he said to me that he likes it. And then he likes Zebulon Pike. And there's a mountain named after him, and he likes it because it's biblical, so he likes the sound of the name. That's not his name. They don't have names. They don't use written and spoken language like we do. They know that we do, and we like it, so they pick one. Humans do it too. Somebody has a particular name from a certain civilization or a culture, and they go halfway around the world where their name is almost impossible to understand, so they pick a nickname.
Yeah.
They do it all the time. So that's what he did. But he's from a planet that revolves around the star we call Canopus. For anybody listening that hasn't heard of that, Canopus is the brightest star in the southern hemisphere. It can be seen from the northern hemisphere, but it's the brightest star in the southern hemisphere, and it's about 80, I think, if I remember correctly, about 80 light years in our perception, 300,000 kilometers per second speed of light terms of distance away from Earth.
Well, I want to back up. I think that as we awaken on this path, we very quickly realize that we're so much larger than we think we are. I mean, this is just a meat bag. And I have different I have different parts of my soul that live in different areas. And
meat bag.
Well,
I've heard meat suit, but meat bag. Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't want to call myself a bag, but yeah. No, but I'm existing in different dimensions, different realities, different planets, different.
Yep.
And it's mind-boggling.
Simultaneously.
I know, and I've tapped into a couple, which is really cool. I have to tell you about it. But
The big question: my past life. Well, past life from the perspective of this life living in this human illusion of the timeline, maybe, but it's not past.
Right. There's no.
Not for you, not for your soul.
Yes, and this is where it just keeps expanding and expanding. So, how did you connect with him, and what aspect of yourself, or is he part of you? Not we're all one thing. I'm saying...
No, he's a visitor. He connected with me because I asked him to. He just happened to be in the neighborhood. And I wanted to talk to a particular, hey, alien extraterrestrials, who's around? And he said, hey, I am. Now, that wasn't completely coincidental, although it seemed to be at that point. They were picking up on what was going on, and he decided, okay, I volunteer, and he stepped forward.
And I remember you were saying at one point, and I love this, that they come and go, and that he comes and goes, and that he is actually in this reality above us. I mean, like, not above, above us. Like, the craft is in this reality.
He's around right now because they want to watch us. They want to participate up close.
Right.
That's where I got that. Sitting there eating popcorn, just watching how all this plays out.
That is exactly what I got out of your book, that I came to the same conclusion about 6 years ago, that, I could actually see them in the sky. They would stop over my house, and several photos. I don't share them with too many people, but I have small beings you can see in orbs. They've actually came across the sky, stopped over my house at about 500 feet over my house. And I've got a photo of one of them looking back towards me, and he actually came to a stop. I followed him through the camera because I zoomed in at a fairly good zoom, and I could see its head and body, small body.
Sure, it stopped the pose for you. Absolutely.
Right. And he connected with me, and I'm like, uh-oh. And it was almost like, uh-oh, he can see me now. Not, that, oh, wait a minute, he's down on the ground looking up at me, and we connected. And after that, I understood the telepathy aspects of it. And then after that, I started getting extreme curiosity. That's how they portrayed it to me. I would get this idea in my head. It was time to go out and take video. And especially like a day like today, outside, it's gorgeous here. I know they're all out there because I can just imagine they're out there. I mean, I can see them.
You're not imagining it. When you say, I get the idea, because they're sending you that telepathic message.
They're sending me that message.
Hey, we're in the neighborhood. Come on out. Bring your camera.
Right. I've actually done that. Believe it or not, my neighbors have witnessed this with me. So there's groups of people that have actually gone through this, and I've actually trained small groups of people after I've done small talks or presentations, and then we go outside, because I always make sure we're doing the presentation in the afternoon when the weather's nice, usually in the summer and fall. And we go outside when we're done, and you'd be surprised how many people, they just can't imagine it. And I said, well, just wait 5 minutes, and we're all going to have a group session here and think collectively, will you show yourselves? And sure enough, wait 5 minutes, and the whole sky fills up.
Well, I'll give you an
And,
example of one way they showed themselves to me. Zebulon and his cohort. I don't know if I told you about this, Kerry. I think this was the second time I was on the Joyride show, and it was the evening before, and I was sitting out on the back patio, and I heard the engines of a jet plane approaching.
mm-hmm.
And that was pretty unusual because there are no regularly scheduled flights over my neighborhood, and I can tell by the sound of the engine that it was a big plane, and it was
Mm-hmm.
going slow, and it was pretty low. So I looked up, and sure enough, this big plane, equivalent to an Airbus A319, A320, or 737,
Mm-hmm.
flew over my house, probably about 500 or 600 feet over the house. Well, here's the problem. I thought, isn't that unusual? What the hell's that plane doing there? So I without thinking, hopped on flightradar24.com to see if there
I know
was
that program.
nothing there. Nothing showing up on the radar. I heard the plane for about a good 5 or 6 seconds, and the sound of the engines went down in frequency just as the Doppler effect says it should. And then the volume of the plane kind of went away, almost as if somebody was intentionally turning down the sound and it disappeared. It was flying so low, it was as if the plane was on its final approach, preparing to land maybe a quarter mile east of me. Now, here's why this is so unusual. Aircraft are not allowed to fly any lower than 1,000 feet above the ground, any place there's any residential or commercial development. And they're supposed to be at least 1,000 feet above the tallest structure that they know exists, whatever it is, building, tower, what have you, smokestack. The two tallest buildings between downtown Houston and downtown Dallas are about 4 miles east of my house, the Twin Towers of Anadarko Petroleum, and they're exactly 444 feet tall. So there's no way an aircraft is going to be below 1,500 feet.
Right.
This is rule number one for a pilot. When a pilot learns how to fly, okay, this is the stick, this is the throttle, and this is how high you have to be. This is absolute minimum requirement. Number two, when a plane is that close to a major airport like George Bush Intercontinental in Houston, they're under the control of ATC, air traffic control. Air traffic control would never let a large jet descend to that altitude. That guy might as well just take his pilot's license and rip it up and throw it in a bag with a check for the $50,000 fine that he's going to get for the FAA for flying that low over a residential area. But here was this plane, all the lights lit up, and it didn't show up on radar. So I started asking my guardian angel guides, what's going on? And they started laughing, saying, that's Zebulon. They're flying over your house with their ship, but they're disguising it as an airplane.
Right.
So the sound and the look is them. That's not an airplane.
Yep.
That's their ship. I said, which ship? He said, the big one, the big mama ship that they brought from their star system. They brought it in out of orbit down into the atmosphere about 500-600 feet above your house, but they disguised it. And I said, really, it's that big? And they said, yeah, it's about the size of a 737.
Yep.
And they came down and they said, that's pretty unusual. Usually when they come into the atmosphere, they come with a scout ship.
The little
They
tiny
leave
ones.
Right.
smaller one.
The small ones.
They leave the bigger one up into orbit, and it's hidden, it's cloaked, can't see it, and they come with the smaller ones. They can cloak those also, or they can decloak, or, as I say, open their coat and show themselves off if they want to, and flash us, and they do.
Well, okay, so what is Michael, can we roll the one that says stick figure? So, do you remember, Bill, when I sent you the one that looks like a stick going across?
Yes.
It goes from the far right bottom corner, and it'll go across, and it starts right at the 3-second mark. And where is it? Why are we not seeing it?
This is a video you took.
There it is. Can you slow it down? Okay. Okay. So I will drop it in right there. So it looks like a stick,
I remember the video you sent, and it looks like it's almost gray colored
It's almost black.
with a white tinge to it. Yes.
Here we go. I'll stop it.
There have been news reports about many people seeing long stick-like things
Yes.
flying in the sky.
It does. It looks like a stick.
And sometimes they curve a little bit like a snake, and sometimes they're straight.
Yes.
This cracks me up.
That is actually, I began to see those in 2010.
You saw a
And
stick?
they look like flying sticks in the sky. I mean, it was interesting, and they move very fast, and then they're gone.
Yeah, they're little scout ships.
Yep, scout ships.
Do you know where they're from?
No, they're not. I'm not getting any direct
Yeah.
information about that.
Okay, so
They're not. In other words, they're not connecting with me, saying this is who we are, this is what we're doing, this is why. But my guardian angel guides are telling me they're conducting pure observation, but they're kind of enjoying themselves and maybe titillating us a little bit by allowing us to see them. But they're not attempting to communicate or connect with us. They're just looking.
So how do they know when we send out the frequency? How do we know? I mean, because obviously we're sending out things all the time, but to send it out saying, "Okay, guys,"
How do you know your newborn baby is in distress?
what?
You're a mother, right?
You just
Okay. Did you
just
ever have to
know.
learn that?
No.
Okay, I had kids. Well, they're big now, but they were little. It's just automatic. That's how
So
they know.
just know.
They just know.
Yeah. You're always giving off this energy, emotional energy, I call it,
Yes.
and your mind. They can read your thoughts. Now, I sometimes question whether I don't want them to read all of my thoughts all the time, but I'm sure they pick up on some things that aren't, what the rest of the world probably doesn't need to know. But at the end of the day, if you reach out, I've been very successful. And let me tell you, they started, in my experience, they started, I think we talked about this, when I was about 15 years old, and I had the experience of missing time and being in an automobile with other adults, and I was a teenager, and everything just stopped when we saw the craft land about 50 yards ahead of us at night. And the rest of the parties the next day don't remember anything. I mean, it was a total missing time. And I'm the only one that recalls anything about it, even to this day.
Well,
I talk to
because
my
you were the only
friends.
one that was having that experience.
Exactly.
So they just went to
And
sleep.
I always found that
No,
strange.
no. It's not that they were asleep. It's that you went off into a different dimension where time, as it
Correct.
applies on Earth,
Right.
wasn't a component of what you were doing.
hmm
And then when you came
And-
back, you come back to the same point where you left off. You just hit the pause button. Imagine,
Yes.
to people listening to this, imagine if you've got two computers in front of you and you've got two videos. And you're watching and participating in video A, and then you hit the pause button. It just stays where it is. Then you go over and watch the second video. And then when that's done, you go back to the first one.
Great
That's
visual.
That's what happened.
exactly. That is what it's like. It was that way in my outer body experience at my near death at the age of 19. It's like I could see, and I could be in two places at the same time, and I could see my body, and I could feel myself, but I was about 20% lighter feeling. It was like being in a dream, but the dream was very real. I could hear, smell, feel, temperature, everything that was going on, but I wasn't in the body. And then I got pushed back in. And then that's when my full awareness started, to where I could actually start having dreams that are similar to what you've experienced, Patrick, like with your career. And I was always shown and tapped into where I needed to be. I was already shown visually what that was going to be and where I needed to be, when to make a phone call, who I was going to contact. I was shown this repeatedly over the last 40 years of my career. And that all started back in college when I changed majors and started to look into other things to do that better suited my talents. And it really wasn't my own decision. It was like, well, this is what my life plan was supposed to be, and I'm following out what I had agreed to do.
As we
many
all do.
times, right. And many times I almost gave up. and said, I've had enough of this, like I did about a year and a half ago. Okay, I'm done. I've shown everybody. No one else is listening. And then wham, all of a sudden, here we are, and we're talking right now to a large audience. And since I've been on Carrie's program, the audience base, people have reached out to me that are really waking up. And I've already communicated with at least 10 people that have seen the program and have followed through with emails and explain where they're at in their process of waking up, because that's, I believe, what this is all about, and understanding that there's a lot more going on here in what we call life, and having these experiences. And in many people, it's almost like counseling them. And I'm not a really good counselor, but that's what I've been put in that role now, and using what I've learned. But once they connect visually, like you had said earlier, then all of a sudden they have something they can hold on to.
Oh,
that's the big difference.
It becomes the overlap. It's kind of like any of us that have studied geometry. They show set A, set B, where's the overlap.
Correct.
And it becomes that overlap that a lot of people need.
Well,
right. And you quoted that in your book. I'm going to quote you. Human belief requires proof of receipt as evidence. And that's what people are looking for,
good, huh?
Something they can hold on to. He says, it's where he said, just as broadcasting, they can't receive it if you don't have the television on and the radio on.
Right.
And a lot of people are hearing, but all of a sudden they need that visual accounting. And then all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute. And then they find out they can go do it and get the same results. They wake up, and then they go out and respond. And believe it or not, it turns exponential. Then they start having people, and they start having other people wake up, because they start to believe after seeing with their own eyes. Some people have to see with their own eyes and understand and how to connect with it. But the biggest thing is understanding this channeling that takes place and not be fearful of it.
Or confused or threatened by it.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
confused or threatened. Mm-hmm.
I want to say something here. I have Richard, what's his name? Dolan. There we go. He recently came out. There was a show that he did, and it was really interesting because I have to be grounded. There is something that I need to be grounded, whether it's through my husband or it's through, and that is something that I've had a hard time with, is that I feel like with so much of this, and I know you've seen it, and I know you've seen this, you can make up whatever you want. I mean, you can, and I think oftentimes, I'm not sure how many people are really getting things, or they really want to get things, which I think kind of gets in the way sometimes, that desire to do it versus just doing it. But that's what I love about Dr. Schild's work, and that's what I love about the two of you, is that you're grounded, because I don't want to just make stuff up. And you can't really have evidence, yet I have. But so he did this.
But you know how to make stuff up, right?
Of course I know how to make stuff up.
Then just don't.
Well, when it's all intangible, it's hard not to. I mean, haven't you ever heard of the person, the girl that was in love with the guy, and the guy's like, I have no idea where she's getting this?
I'm going to take exception to that.
Okay.
If you're making stuff up, you can't make it up accidentally. It's like saying, hey, I bought a house accidentally. You can't.
No, that's concrete, because you can touch the house.
Same thing with making
sign
things.
The papers.
Right. So when you're making something up and you're telling a story, you're fabricating an illusion, you know you're doing that. So when you're pursuing a story, you're telling something, and it's channeling, don't make it up. Just say what comes into your head. That's not making things up.
If you spent 10 minutes in this noggin, you would
understand. More
understand.
inside of your noggin than you think.
Don't say that.
No, it's all G-rated. It's all nice. It's all...
Okay.
You would never object to it. You have guardian angels. I have guardian angels. Bill has guardian angels. Everyone has them. They are guardians for a reason. They only allow other people to telepathically communicate with any of us or anyone else within the parameters and permissions that we establish.
Right.
It's the same thing with alien extraterrestrials. Now, the guardian angels, they know everything about us. They see everything. They know everything. There are no secrets there. But alien extraterrestrials can't, of their own volition, observe you in the bathroom unless you want them to and you tell them. And even then, they probably don't want to. They're not interested. It's not because they'd like to, but they don't. They don't care. It doesn't register for them.
It's like watching your dog.
Right.
I mean, it's not an issue.
The dog is going out to go to the bathroom. Well,
Right.
let me go out. I'm so curious. You don't care.
Well, yeah.
They don't care. They don't want to see it. We have human values about things that we would show publicly, things that we would show to other people who we trust, things that we wouldn't want to show to anybody. None of this applies with aliens. With telepathic communication between people, the same rules apply. So you can't break into my thoughts and find out things about me that I don't want you to know, or vice versa. No one can.
Jamie Butler, she was coming on the show, and I tried to connect with her the night before, and this is really before I really realized you need to ask for permission. I got nowhere near her. And the next day on the show, I told her this, and she said, "Oh yeah, no, I'm locked down. I mean, that's intentional." And that was the first time I really got that. Okay, can we pull up the head that looks like needs to go to the dermatologist? I want to ask you about this. Bill was with me through this. So one night I asked for a sign. I want a sign, I want a sign, I want a sign. And I've alluded to this, but I've not really come out with it because it really I feel vulnerable with this. But the next morning I woke up with this on my head.
Okay.
The very next morning.
Okay.
So I sent it to Bill and I said, "What do you think this is?" He's like, "Yeah, it's your confirmation. It is. It's what you asked for." So, and then I started looking, and this is where I'm talking about being grounded, where you start grasping for straws or because I only have in my head what's in my head unless I channel. And so how about the 2 star clusters? So then I started looking at the pattern, and then I started looking at these patterns. And what do you think? What do you get from this?
There you go. We're Palladians. And the reason we put that
The
on your
Palladian.
and the reason they put it on your forehead is to know you can't miss it. For example, if they wave a flag that's in a room of your house, you might think, "Oh, who moved that?" Or "What breeze moved that?" You'd question it, maybe. If it's on your forehead, are you going to question it? It's right there. It's your forehead. It's your head. How can you question that?
Well,
You can touch it.
Candida? Is it? I mean, you go through all of these different things because
Okay, so where did the thought come from that it looked like the Pleiades cluster, and why did you make it? What a coincidence! It was not a coincidence. That's channeling.
And
it's
I
the
do channel
Pleiadians
when I
telling
write,
you,
but-
okay, you wanted a sign. Here's the sign.
Well, how did they get it there?
They asked your guardian angels for permission. Your guardian angels said, "Fine, go ahead."
So
She wants this. She wants this, so go ahead. So they did it. Your guardian angels helped.
I laugh because Bill and I were talking. He's like, "Yeah, it could be the grays." I'm like, "I don't want grays in my house." Yeah, anyway, and I get that I shouldn't say that.
No alien extraterrestrial is going to come into your house.
But that happens. But you hear about it happening.
It's not going to happen to an individual person unless that person already has it scheduled and agreed. They're not going to come in against somebody's will.
Right.
The most frustrating aspect of the whole topic that I've run across is this idea that is so well planted and is so off base that there are these evil, malevolent alien extraterrestrials that are going to come hurt humans. That would have happened already. We wouldn't even be here if that were the case. And I talked about this a little bit in my presentation at the UFO conference. And I took a screenshot from an episode of The Family Feud where they had people answering questions. The question in this particular case was, what would you do if an alien landed behind your house? And 50% of the people that responded to the question would run, lock doors, call the police, call the FBI, call the fire department, and grab a gun. This is hilarious. Beings that have the technological capability to travel across the galaxy, but someone is going to run away from them, really. Lock a door. And what locked door is going to grab a gun? They'll neutralize you and force you to drop the gun before you could even pull the trigger.
Right.
Anything that we would consider a weapon that we might want to use against an alien extraterrestrial, they will render completely useless immediately, in an instant. They don't want to hurt us, and they don't want us to hurt them. They would never allow that. But there's this belief that somehow we shouldn't contact them because if we try and contact aliens, they might find us. What do you mean they might find us? They created us. They've been watching Earth since before there were humans on Earth. They're here
Yep.
all the time. We're a big important Broadway show for them. They come and they watch all the time.
Why? Why?
Because they created us. They're watching us develop. They're learning. They're studying. Why do we do it? Talk to an anthropologist. Talk to a biologist that studies any insect. They're fascinated by it. All of us are fascinated by some sort of study of something. Watch the dolphins. Watch the whales. Watch the gorillas behave. Learn about them. Look at how the dogs. Well, go to a dog park and watch the dogs play. Isn't that interesting? To observe them.
Yep.
Why do they do the things that they do?
YouTube cat videos.
Yep.
That's what they do with us. Now, I'm not saying we're like the animals. What we're doing is much more sophisticated. They're watching human behavior and human trends. They're watching us right now struggling, for example, with free speech. They're watching Western societies take a step back from levels of education and understanding and enlightenment. They're watching people, for example, in the United States stand up and down and advocate for violating the First Amendment and then protesting bitterly when someone suggests that's what they're doing. But they're doing it openly. Just listen to them.
Right.
They want to curtail free speech. They love watching this. There was a Democrat debate the other night, and one of the candidates who's running for president, who's from El Paso, Texas, completely reversed himself on a very important congressional position. He said one thing last year, now he said something completely different. Completely different. Changed his position 180 degrees, as if he said, I'm black and now I'm white. They watch this, the aliens. They love this. This is fascinating to them.
It's a movie.
To watch our
societal
development.
But why? I mean, what
To learn,
is
to
this
understand.
just a project?
To understand us, because they've gone through all of this themselves.
Do you think you're human? I don't think
Do
I'm
I
human.
think I'm human?
Well, I know you are in this meat bag, but
what's your definition of human?
well, do you think you originated here, or do you think you're
This body,
seeded from somewhere
this body
else?
did, but human beings, as they now exist, are alien extraterrestrial hybrid creations.
Right.
We are not a natural species to Earth.
Are there
No.
any species that are natural to their native planets? And what is I guess what does it mean?
Other
I
alien
mean,
extraterrestrials?
That would mean that the world.
No,
that they lived
generally,
on-
generally not.
Well, I would think because you're not birthed by the world there. I mean, that's it. I'm getting off track there, but
All life on Earth was at one point planted here.
we're like a library.
Most plant and animal life on Earth has evolved from the original seedlings from many millions of years ago. And a lot of what we know is true, although we've got the timelines off a little bit, but not human beings. Human beings were created. The whole Adam and Eve thing is true. The whole Eve was created by splicing a little bit of the rib of Adam. Well, that's just a human reference to gene splicing. That's exactly
Adding
what
the
happened.
gene pool.
This idea that, there's a missing link. Well, it's missing because it doesn't exist. There's no link between large simians, in other words, large apes, gorillas, for example, chimpanzees, and humans. We're not descended from them.
I get in trouble when I talk about this kind of thing because I don't know enough about it. Yes.
Well, I have a question, because this leads into the next thing is where were each of us before we came into the body? And my guides, guide, I only have one, when I've been on board this craft, and it's usually when I've been asleep, they take me, or my soul goes there, my astral body travels there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been shown that I'm one of them, and they're tall, white robe, but their energy, their projection looks like they have a robe. They're about
How tall do they seem to be?
7 to 8 feet tall.
And you say they
I
look
can see
white?
it. They're white, and it looks like they have a robe with a hood on the hood,
Oh, no
but there's
kidding.
really no facial description of it.
Syrians. No kidding.
Syrians. Okay.
Syrians. Oh, no kidding. Well, Syrians are the
And-
bad boys.
yep.
I've talked about this in the book. They're
Okay.
one of the most sophisticated and powerful technologically civilizations, certainly in our star cluster, our area, and in the top 1-2% in our galaxy.
Okay.
And they are the principal guardians, I guess the word is, or
Yeah.
overseers, and that's how they look. They
Yeah,
look
they're-
tall. They
it-
look tall, white or gray, depending on the background light. The long robes.
Yes. And there's male and female versions of them, because
Mm-hmm.
when I've been on board the large craft, they're maybe 6 stories tall inside in the mezzanine area. I have seen other humans, and you were female, you had a more female gender size scaled down slightly. And if you're the male, and I could hear them talking, see, communicating telepathically. It wasn't just me and my guide. It was, I could hear the other people. And one of the ladies actually lives here in Wichita. I know who she is because I know she's
A
connected.
human that goes to visit with them aboard their ship.
Yes,
No
another
kidding.
person. I saw them when I finally got to touch this light coming up through the floor that went to the top of the craft, and it's the light projections. I don't know if she's shown you any of my pictures or videos, but they know how to project when they're communicating, and they want to get the point across. And I see it in my camera. They'll project a light column above the craft or their projection. I call it their Merkabah, because some of these I believe are individuals and they can appear like ships, but they're energy and they can take on form, and they can project this light that they let me touch. And that was my form of connecting back to remind me who and where I came from, because we then entered a warp and we're traveling in space. I mean, it was like a wormhole, and I was supposed to be going back to where we came from. And I got frightened and fear took over. My guide was with me right behind me. I could sense it. And then I woke up. And again, I always wake up at 10 minutes till 6 in the morning when these, the four major times I've been taken on board the craft. But that's where I finally have come to the conclusion I'm one of them when I'm not here. And they were trying to, and my other friend who's an experiencer here in Wichita, he pointed that out. He says, Bill, you're one of them. What you described to me, and he says, I've actually been on board that craft, but I was down in the lower compartment working where the energy is converted out of the vacuum of space. They have the technology to do that, and that's where this light energy comes from. And he says, I understand.
Your human occupation is the interior infrastructure of aircraft, correct?
Correct.
You think
yes,
that's a coincidence?
No, I think it all plays together. It all plays.
Well, your guides are telling me right now that it's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's more than just plays together. It's just a natural evolution. And all of your associates and friends back home are watching you in this incarnation build out the inside of aircraft using knowledge and insight that you already have.
Yes.
And it's very entertaining for them to watch this. They like this.
I'm sure it is, because I've started to notice that they're the ones that were feeding me the information I needed to know at the right time through my career. When I get images. I don't get like the spoken word. I get full scale images of what is on my mind, or the problem that needs to be solved, or what it needs to look like, or perform, or do something. I get the whole image of the whole system.
Yeah, I get that too. I get the words or
And
the
that's
image
how
or a
it is.
combination.
Right. It's a whole image. There's usually no voice communication, other than when I've been on the craft. They telepathically commute back and forth with me. And when I ask, can I touch the light, I immediately get, like in a male voice, yes, go ahead. It's like you're free to do. You know what you're doing. You've done this before. And then when I do it, it's like, oh, wow, this is something, this is like unbelievable. Okay? And then I started to remember. And I don't tell that to too many people. So this is kind of like a coming out of, in my journal I kept. I wasn't quite sure whether to tell people or not, if this was who I really am, but I believe that's where I belong. I've been back on that ship, and I remember the last time actually coming back through space or a distance, being dropped back into my body. I've actually seen that, and then was visually left with an image of the craft, one of these white, large craft, glowing white with the light around it. And that's where I was being teleported back, or my soul was coming back into the body. And that's where I gave you the image, Carrie, of that. It looks like the star tetrahedron. I was given that image graphically, and my brother at about the same time, within a month, we had a conversation, and he had the same experience, and he drew it. He was in a hotel, And when he called and he says, "You're not going to believe this. We're going to do a blind study, and you draw what you saw, and I'll draw what I saw, and we'll exchange in the next half hour a picture of it." And we did, and they're identical. So I know how we're all linked up. He's here having an experience. I'm here having an experience.
As you're describing this, the whole video of the ship and everything, and you going inside, it was all playing in my mind like a movie. There are no words that make it possible for me to describe what I'm watching. But this is not stick figures or two-dimensional drawings on a piece of paper. This is like watching a 3D movie in my head.
3D movie. Yes.
Of what you're describing.
Right, and everything's in black and white. When I'm on board the craft, I'm the only thing that has color in it, or other people. I mean, literally, I can see my wedding ring on my left hand, my wristwatch when I reached my hand out, because I used my left hand to reach out rather than my right hand. And I'm not a left-handed person; I'm right-handed. But I reached out with my left hand for some reason.
And you can see those objects on your hand.
Exactly. It's like when I would fly an airplane. If you're in the pilot seat, you're flying with your left hand, and that's what I use to control. Today, if I reach out with tools or something, I usually start with my left hand, because then I know I can see, if I'm in a situation. And so that was my verification, and it's still burned into my imagery right now. I can close my eyes. In fact, I don't even have to close my eyes. The image of being there, I can replay it again, and I remember what it felt like, the heat. The temperature in the room was a perfect 70 degrees. I mean, it was like picture perfect temperature. Everything just smelled like I don't know if you've been out, like after it rains, everything just smelled crisp, clean. It had its own odor, even being in that presence. But what interested me was how tall these beings are. It was the first time I've ever felt like somebody was really towering over me, because they were 7 to 8 feet tall, and I'm only 6 foot. And
only 6 foot? That's pretty tall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a little shorter now, probably, but about 6 foot is my astral projection of what I look like in my own mind. And I thought that was interesting how they created. I'd love to be back on their vessel. In fact, the more I've looked at it, and then that's when I started looking into, well, how does their technology work? Well, some people have actually known how it works, and I think I communicated that with you on how they use the vacuum of space, and it's an interesting way of moving through space. Basically, it's using like wormholes. It's an interesting study. And there's actually a patent.
Magnetic vacuums, and we struggle with that. What's a magnetic vacuum? Well, we know what magnetism is, and we know how to shield against magnetism. The next step technologically, which would be quite a leap for humans, is to be able to create a magnetic vacuum, and it will work the same way as a physical vacuum of air. Create a vacuum, and then the pressure of the surrounding medium to fill that vacuum was very powerful. Very, very powerful.
Yep, it's called vacuum state propulsion, and there's actually a U.S. patent. And I've tried to look up the individual. His name's given there. He lived in Indiana at one time, and he's not there anymore, because I actually called the place where it's listed in the patent, and they said, well, he moved several years ago. So I'd love to meet this individual. So if he's ever out there, or she's out there, whatever name he used, I'd love to meet up with this person, because I think we could share the same. Yeah, and I think we could share a lot of information, and come to find out he or she's probably from the same place I'm from, where they tried to show me this, how it worked. And it didn't take me long to find all of this information once I started Googling. And
aliens want to show us lots of things.
Right. And what's interesting is I'm intuitive enough to know what to even type in to Google, and for some reason it knows where to go look.
No. You're not intuitive enough. This is channeling. Everybody says, "Oh, my intuition."
Yeah.
Well, you can call it that if you want to, but it's channeling.
It is channeling, and I've had that happen with other people. Oh, well, isn't that funny? I was just going to call you, Bill, and I was like, "Well, I beat you." I call them, and they're like, "Well, that's funny. You were on my mind." I said, "Well, I already read your mind," and these are people that are professionals within the some of my clients. And the other people I have to deal with the federal government that I have to deal with. And they're like, well, how did you know to call me? And I said, well, I've explained to some of them, they know about my sightings and everything. I'm not afraid to tell people anymore. So I've even reached out to other people that and after that, you begin to have a different relationship, and then they're a lot more talkative and they start asking questions. That's what I've noticed, is they started asking questions. And once you have that, then you can start, showing them how to take the photos and everything. And then they feel a lot more comfortable, and they change their whole paradigm. Their whole paradigm changes.
Almost in a flash. So Bill has had this experience. I've had it. I know, I believe you and I talked about it, visiting the New Earth. And so my question is, why do you think now this is really revving up and it's becoming a little, there are more of us coming out with this?
Mm-hmm.
And do you think, I mean, I know what Bill experienced, I know what I experienced, but this whole concept of a new Earth or parallel timelines that shift and split, what is your thought on that?
The entire universe, and certainly our galaxy is part of it, are experiencing a general shift in energy. The best parallel I could draw to Earth would be weather patterns. Calm for a while, then it gets a little sporty, and then it gets calmer. The energy of the universe is going through a bit of a change right now, and we're experiencing it on Earth. We are also now coming, and this is in a large way scheduled, we as human beings are coming to the apogee or the peak or the top of physical development within the limitations that we have for the third time. We're not anywhere close to what we reached under the civilization of Atlantis. But we're fortunately not doing some of the bad things the Atlanteans did. They were a bit warlike, and they did some other things, and they got into DNA manipulation, and they created a whole bunch of beings, mermaids, centaurs, unicorns, all those. Those are not fantasies. That's real. Those things were created through DNA manipulation. We haven't done any of that. We debate it up and down, and the reason we debate it is because this is a memory of the problems and the challenges that come along with it. But that's part of it. One of the interesting things that has brought us to this point is that we learned how to play with matches without understanding conflagrations. We discovered nuclear energy, and the first thing we did was set off bombs and slaughter hundreds of thousands of people in the process, and have risked annihilating humanity and mankind. That's the one area where our guardian angel guides, not alien extraterrestrials, folks, guardian angel guides do interfere and prevent it. And from every once in a while, we'll hear about, certainly this has happened with North Korea, but in other places, Russia's another example, we'll hear about a nuclear missile or nuclear weapon that's being tested, or a nuclear sub, and suddenly something goes wrong and it just doesn't work. Well, there's a reason it doesn't work. They don't want it to work. That is the one area where we're subject to a little bit of interference. It's not alien extraterrestrials that are doing this. It's our own guardian angel guides in the collective. Remember, we have, what are we up to, 6.5 billion people on Earth, 7 billion? 1 to 3 at least from every person. So we've got 15, 20 billion guardian angel guides, all perfectly coordinated and all organized into battalions and regiments and everything else that take care of us. And they understand what we're up against and what the risks are, and they will not let us do that. However, they're fascinated with the way we approach it and the way we're developing and using technology and how it's changing everything to our benefit and to our detriment. All of the studies that are now coming out about how holding cell phones to your ear can now cause tumors. That's true.
I've been saying that for a while.
And then they're talking about all of the effects of social media and what's happening with cerebral development and social development, and what are the changes. They're fascinated by watching all this. Actually, I'm fascinated by it. If people are looking, I'll tell you the generational divide. Here, folks, this is an older cell phone, so it's smaller. I will watch people read things on a cell phone, and this is what I see. Now, imagine if this was a piece of paper and it just had regular print on it. and somebody wanted to show me a 2-page report. Well, if I got to read it on a cell phone, I have to do this. It's torture. Why can't I just look at the whole thing?
The paper's right here. They would prefer to read it on their phone?
There's a whole generation, and they're under
Yeah.
30, that will read things on a cell phone. To them, this is not a limitation.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
To
Okay,
me,
yeah.
reading something like that on a cell phone is like putting it on a piece of paper and then putting a box around my face and making me do this. There's a whole generation that doesn't see it that way, and they think that there's something the matter with me, that I want to see the whole 8.5 by 11 page. That's an example of how social media has distorted human visual perception and information coming in. That's just one tiny example. There are many, many others. Just in the Western world alone, how males and females interact with one another, how online dating applications have completely changed the way people now in their late teens and all in their 20s meet one another and date. How has this affected marriage rates, average age of marriage, etc.? For the alien extraterrestrials, this is a fascinating anthropological study to watch what we're doing and what are the effects. We also pick up on a lot of these effects. And as soon as someone comes out and offers a position that seems to go against the preferred flow or the general narrative, what happens? Look at how they get shouted down and attacked and insulted and criticized, or falsely lauded or pumped up. Humans have always done this, but now we're able to do it on a global scale.
Instantly.
Almost instantly.
Yeah.
And this is causing all sorts of changes, benefits, but there are some pitfalls to it. The alien extraterrestrials are fascinated by this. They're absolutely fascinated. And they want to tell us about it and talk to us. And this comes to the bigger issue. When are we going to see revelation? When are we going to see disclosure? When are the aliens all going to come down, land, drop their ladders, march out of their ships and say, take me to your leader? Everybody wants to see that. That's going to happen when we as humanity invite them. It's no more complicated than that. Inviting somebody just involves acknowledging that they exist and that they get your invitation and they accept it and they RSVP. But how many people struggle with that? It's very basic. Let's send the invitation. But we have to send the invitation collectively. I can't do it on behalf of everybody else.
Free will.
Right.
We have to do it. We have to reach critical mass, 50% plus one. It's just like winning an election. 50% plus one have to affirmatively, in their mind, invite aliens down to Earth. We're not even close to that.
But that's
humans,
the fight.
Humans, we're at the freak-out stage.
Well, yeah, but because we're taught that, and we're taught through our media or TV.
We teach each other willingly. We go out of our way to teach each other that. I'll give everybody an example. Take a large hunting knife. Everybody's seen one with a long, very sharp blade that a hunter would use to skin a large animal that they've just shot. I'm talking like a moose or deer, something like that. Take it and point it at virtually anybody in the Western world, or almost any person in the world that's an adolescent or older. They're all going to react in an almost automatic, typical way. They're going to realize that it's dangerous and it has to be handled very carefully. And if someone points it at you, that's a threat. Wave that same knife at a 6-month-old baby. They're going to reach up and touch it. They're not going to be threatened at all. They haven't yet learned what it is and what the potential risks are. Do the same thing with a house cat. The house cat's going to stick their nose up and go and sniff it because they haven't learned what that thing represents. So, and it's very important for us to teach one another what the risks are. But we're not afraid of a knife if we see a knife sitting on a table. We're afraid of the knife when we see the knife in someone's hand, because what we're really afraid of is the person. Well, this is all voluntary. We teach each other all this. One of the big issues they watch all the time is very curious. For example, in the United States, the number of people that have been murdered and the murder rate has been dropping for 50 years, and it's still for a long time, 30 years, for a long time, and it continues to drop. The number of mass murders within has increased. The number of incidents of mass murders has skyrocketed compared to what it used to be. It almost never occurred. Now it happens every couple of weeks. But the number of people killed versus the people killed in a mass murder is still a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. The probability of being injured that way is less than getting hit by lightning. There's nothing to fear of it. And there are concrete steps many people can take. However, look at how we react to it when it occurs. And look at how people behave. And aliens love this. We have politicians that run around and I'm going to express my personal opinion on this, they disgust me because they know that gun confiscation is a hoax. It's not going to solve anything. It's not going to, oh, let's pass another law and everyone's going to behave themselves. Oh, really? Oh, so they're going to be good people because we passed a law that says you are mandated by law to be a good person. Really? No kidding. Aliens love to watch these developments because we teach each other this. There isn't some nefarious force coming from planet Beldar that's making us this way. We choose to teach each other these things. We choose to present this imagery and behave a certain way. This is better than a Broadway show for our alien extraterrestrial visitors. And they see pitfalls, they see downfalls to certain things that we choose to do, but they understand that there is great value in learning from experience, and they really enjoy watching us. They would love to come and tell us, but there's another way to approach it. To approach public safety, how to approach economics, how to approach well-being, how to approach medical treatment and healthcare. They would love to show us alternatives, but they're never going to do it unless we invite them in. Because if they come in and do it without us inviting them,
it's our free
they're
will.
interfering. They can't do that.
And it usurps it. Yeah.
We have to invite them. It has to be our choice. If we invite them in and listen and learn not to pay attention to the screaming idiot off in the end of the spectrum who sees his bull getting gored, he sees that he's going to lose out. By the way, folks, I'm referring to politics, and that's what politics has become, certainly in the Western world, is that the very powerful, very tiny special interest screams at 5,000 decibels and splits everybody's eardrums when they see that a public policy proposal is going to affect them. They go, they lose their minds. Maybe I'm being a little bit of extreme, but this is so common nowadays. We think that's normal. Well, the aliens are watching all this, and they're saying, okay, how are we going to help humanity by jumping in the middle of this uninvited? We're not. We're not. Half the population is going to run and grab a shotgun. That's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help us. It's not going to help them. When we're acknowledged and our presence is accepted and people are willing to listen to us, we as humans, it's a small percentage of us, but they have a very outsized effect. We don't want to listen to each other if it isn't what we want to hear.
Right.
Well, they know that. So we're not going to speak to you and interfere until you invite us in and make it clear that you're going to listen to us for 1 hour, and we're going to show you certain things. And then you have a choice.
Well, I think they tried it back in the 60s.
Well, they've been trying it
50s.
Continuously in bits and pieces.
Well, okay, so that goes back to the disclosure, and there are a lot of people that say, we just want to rip off the Band-Aid, just full disclosure. It's like, no, I don't agree with full disclosure because I think that it would upset the apple cart to a point that it would just freak people out too much, where doing it this way, a drip at a time, allows people to get on board. And you're right, it's like the harmonic convergence of 1987. Enough people had tipped the scale.
Well, I was shown on my second trip onto the craft. They showed me on a large video screen what was going to start happening, and it did within like a year after that. The earthquake started, Fukushima happened, and that's changed. That woke up a lot of people. And then I started feeling the energy every time the Earth's doing something. If there's earthquakes anywhere on the planet, if it goes over 5.6, 5.5, somewhere in there, I get a download of energy, and all of this was going to start happening, and people would start freaking out. Well, you look how many people actually did. The weather phenomena was going to become worse, and they showed me that. I could hear men, women, and children screaming. They played it out. It seemed like a good half hour on a screen. They showed me all the things that, like a little timeline, what was going to start happening, but it was part of the awakening that the Earth itself, people don't want to believe that it's alive, but it is alive. It has a soul or an essence to it, and it was time for it to raise its vibration. And we either go along with it and learn to adapt and actually wake up. And actually this morning in the Bahamas, they're getting ready for another tropical storm. Well, they were interviewing people that were there and what they were going to do, and they're dealing still with what happened 2 weeks ago. And what's interesting is it's changing their views, because now they're starting to point that, well, I'm worried about my family. Our families are important now. It's not all the material things. It's the human being that they've been living with that they took for granted. Now they're like, well, they may have lost their loved ones, and others they've alive. And they were talking to people that is a repeated subject. It just they just went from one person to the next. I watched a program this morning where the people are actually on the ground meeting and working with people that are there and trying to figure out what the next move in their life is going to be. So these are the things, because of what's happening, is going to force humanity to change who they are or who we are.
Yes.
Because we're going to have to change. And it's going to be collective. And I know the media doesn't like to talk about it. I was surprised this was on the media this morning, but they actually had people on the ground, and it was the same theme over and over and over again. Well, wait a minute, my family is important. The other human beings in my surrounding that I took for granted, they're pretty important, and they're important to me.
Yes.
And I've never seen that, as long as I've been alive on this planet, ever happen.
People talking, you mentioned this morning, you mentioned this exact thing, and you had told me something like 25,000 folks have died.
Yeah.
Are missing. I had no idea. You're right.
That's the death count that they're willing to suggest is possible. It's higher.
Right.
And they have another storm coming?
Well, it's not going to be anything like before. It's just going to be a little salt in the wound, but it's not going to be a fatal blow.
Right.
Wow.
Well, it's interesting that they showed me this while on the craft, and at first I didn't want to believe it, and then when the earthquake started, they've even hit where I live here. Our house has been shaken from Oklahoma. I live in Kansas, and we're just north of the border there with Oklahoma, and we've had earthquakes here that I've lived here most of my life, except when I lived in Texas down there in southern Texas. I've never had an earthquake, never felt it, and then all of a sudden, it was almost 8 years ago we started having earthquakes, and just here locally, last month we had 2 earthquakes that shook the area. There were 4.0s, but when they're close, you feel it.
Feel more. What year?
And I can feel the energy.
What year did they show you all of this? How long ago?
2010.
And this is 2019.
And in 2012 was the benchmark. That's when it really kicked off. And then I could feel earthquakes. And I asked my higher self, I can't live that way anymore. It was getting almost uncomfortable because I could feel them all during the day, tremors going on and off. I would just know, and sure enough, there'd be a 5.0, 5.5 somewhere on the planet. I couldn't tell where, but they were happening, and I finally had to tell my higher self or my guides, you got to turn that off. And then about a year ago, they turned it back on, and they said, you need to be watching this again.
It's time.
And sure enough, I tell people, I try to warn them. I usually get about a half hour's warning, or better in most cases. The Fukushima, I was standing there the night before that happened, and I told the wife, I said, there's going to be a major earthquake. And I said, my hair even stands up. What I have left of it even stood up. You could see it. And she's like, this is bizarre. And I said, well, it's going to happen. There's going to be a big earthquake.
It's funny, I don't get any of that warning. I was in New Zealand precisely because they had a devastating earthquake in Christchurch. Right. And I was in Christchurch. I had just gotten there a few days before Fukushima, day before Fukushima occurred. And I didn't know it until I read it on the news. And then a few days later, there was an aftershock. And it was pretty powerful. And the epicenter was about 1 kilometer deep and about 2 kilometers away from where I was at the time. And I remember driving in the car thinking the wheels are going to fall off the car. Why are the wheels shaking like this? And I stopped the car, but the car kept shaking. And then I looked out and I saw all the trees shaking and the buildings shaking. And then I realized it was an earthquake.
Wow.
I get no advance warning. But the funniest thing is that I've been in them, and when the earthquake is occurring, this peaceful message comes over me. It's my guardian angels telling me, it'll be okay, you'll be okay, you'll be okay. You'll be fine. Just hang on, just hang on.
Well,
and I don't feel afraid.
Right. And I'm not fearful anymore because they already showed me what was going to happen, so I'm not fearful. And on top of that, usually a day or two before, starting in about 2011, the things I would see in the sky would change the day before the earthquakes would start happening. Any major earthquake, I could almost predict it by if I happened to go outside and use my sun blocking technique, and it was a nice clear day, things that I would see would change. And that's one of the things that they showed me, that at first I thought it was craft, but it's this quantum conscious field is what they showed me would surround the planet. They actually showed it coming in, and it looks like white orbs flying around, or they're kind of disc shape, and there's so many of them. I think I sent a shortened video clip a couple of weeks ago. I finally converted all my old DVDs over to MP4s, so I went back and looked at it, because it all started in 2009 and it progressed and through 2012. I did the DVDs, and you could see this happening, and it looked exactly like what they showed me on the craft on the video, what was going to happen, and the earth would be surrounded by this. And I believe it's this consciousness field is going to become visible, and that's what I'm seeing. A lot of this is the visibility of this conscious field. And by chance, a little over a year and a half ago, I'm on a business flight, and I run into Caroline Corey, and she deals in this and has known since a child, and that has seen this, and that's the conscious field that we all originate from. And she says, "Oh yeah, it's here." And a lot of times they can tell you, it is the field, and that's where it looks like the craft can come in through. It's all and it deals with telepathy and everything. It's where everything, all this energy originates from. And I showed her some of my videos. She says, "Well, that's what it looks like." She's actually verified what I saw, and have a lot of video too.
I'll include that, because you did send it to me, and it's fascinating. It looks like a highway almost. I mean, they're just breezing by,
going everywhere.
Well,
it's a matrix.
Yes,
it's the matrix.
It's the matrix.
Yeah, it's the matrix.
It's three-dimensional.
Well, we are about out of time, but I wanted to ask you. I know that the images in I want to ask both of you, in my cabinet have changed. I mean, they've changed, and we've figured out that they're holographic communication. And so, do you guys see things coming down the pike now?
Events?
Are things going to continue speeding up?
Which type of things? Social, political, geophysical, alien, extraterrestrial?
All the above? Anything that stands out? I mean, like louder than the others?
Well, we're seeing the beginning of the breakup of the European Union. I've been told about this for a while now. We're watching it. It's pretty interesting what's going on. It kind of speaks for itself. The resistance now from the European Union is they do not want to see Great Britain actually grab the cord, seize the plug, and yank it out of the outlet, and survive without collapsing. Because as soon as they do that, the Dutch are going to go, "Well, I can pull my damn plug out of the wall too."
Right.
And the French will say, "Hey, it looks like a pretty good idea," and that'll be the end of the European Union.
Yeah.
So the people that run it, that benefit from it, it's a very small number. They don't want that to happen. We've gone through a little bit of this in the United States. Look at the reaction to the current president of the United States.
Right.
Why is this occurring? There's going to be more of it, not less.
More upheaval?
Oh, yeah. Social.
Yeah.
So what about craft? I'm sorry, Bill.
Craft. Alien extraterrestrial visitors?
Yeah.
More and more.
Yeah, I see more of the craft coming down here. In fact, today and probably tomorrow, because the weather's going to be gorgeous here and perfect environment for that. And I'll be out there with my camera. And every time I do this, every week, there's always 2 new people that keep showing up where I work or in my life that start asking questions. And I'm not afraid to show them the pictures now. So I've actually got an image the other night while I was sleeping that, there's going to be more craft. You're going to be out there taking more pictures. The YouTube, you're going to be posting YouTube now maybe once a week.
Good.
And people are finally responding to it. I've got more subscribers now than I've ever had. So something's been tripped. And I think that plays into what I was shown 4 years ago about this time of year. So I am envisioning I still think a physical thing is going to happen where something with the sun is going to change, abruptly. People are going to
solar
see
flare.
something simultaneously that they can't explain and science has never been able to explain. And that's going to get everybody's attention. And you're going to start talking and having communication. And it's going to stop what we're all doing for a few minutes. I agree with you, Patrick. I called it madman syndrome, and I coined this term. No, I actually, there's a group of us that we have an email chain or group that discusses this quite regularly, and I coined it madman syndrome, and it's because the frequency is going up. It's like when my mind got turned on, or communication was like, okay, Bill, it's time to wake up and start doing something and start talking about this 10 years ago. That same effect is having on everyone, but their minds aren't adjusting to the frequency because it's all brain. We're wired. It's our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And some people's DNA is waking up, okay, and some people's they'll either drown it with drugs and alcohol or do something else, or they'll act out.
Well,
And that's what you're seeing.
Right.
They're acting out, and eventually they'll come back. But it's going to take I don't want to say a generation, but I think here shortly we're going to see a lot of this unplugging, like the EU is going to unplug. The United States, people here are going to, I think more and more people are waking up. They're not believing the lies. There are people I talk to, and they're not believing. They can't believe what they've lived how many years now, and they're starting like, well, what is going on? And I said, well, it's madman, and it's because the frequency is coming up. Actually, the Earth, the frequency of the planet is going up.
Schumann resonance.
And we're all reacting to it's all harmonics. It's frequency. And we share that experience. So that's where I see it. It's going to be good. When we get through this, it's going to be good. Some people are going to be left. I believe they showed me that in that presentation. Some people are going to be left here for a bit because they're not going to want to go because they don't know what's going on or their soul wasn't ready to move on.
Well, I've been told that everybody goes, but they can also assist in the that part of it. We have to do this again. I think we could have talked for another few hours. So let's touch back base and kind of do a where are we now? How about that?
Well, let's see where the spirit takes us, because I think that I'm going to be seeing some interesting things here in the next 30 days.
Well, just call me when you do, and
I will.
You've got my platform. But okay, so if you want to check out Bill's YouTube, he is Beyond Unwatching One, and it's all one word, and that's on YouTube, and he lists how to video craft and a lot of other things, and he will be adding more to it. And your book, An Alien's Guide, I'll put the link down below, is wonderful. You have to check out his book.
Right.
And he's in the process of writing another book. And if they want to reach
I
you,
didn't send you the bits of that
that's okay.
later.
Okay. So, but you're also
I'm going to be giving a campus-wide speech at Virginia Tech University pretty soon, and I'm also going to be teaching a class about this once. These presentations will show up on YouTube somewhere.
okay.
Stay tuned. It'll be on her.
Okay.
Yeah.
For any viewers watching this, it'll be on her website, her YouTube channel.
Yes, and you can also check out his blog too. He has a great blog, and it's called theamendment.net.
Bingo.
Yeah. So reach out, talk. Everybody's really, really. I think that we're all really supportive, and I try to be as responsive as I can.
Not all of us. There's a segment that just loves to open fire.
Really?
Oh,
right.
Just loves it. It's not very large, but it's very outsized in its effect. They just love to urinate all over anything that doesn't fit in with their preferred view. Look, we see it all the time.
I don't get them. I don't get them. I had one, and
I
he
get 'em.
transmuted and ended up being our biggest fan. I mean, it was. So I don't know what that is, but I think they know that I can't. That I don't handle it.
None of it bothers me. I don't take it personally. It's part of the process.
You're rattling and shaking people.
Right, and some people don't.
Right.
Some people love the cage that they're imprisoned in. They just love that cage. So when you shake that cage, they get ticked off at you.
Yeah, but they're taking the time to write, which I think says something.
Yes.
Right. Well, I've had people after my presentation come up to me doing what you were describing. Well, this is just this is just that. And then I set up the camera and I let them even operate it. And then they start seeing things. And one of them actually, you know how they use the word flying tic-tac. And then after they see it, then all of a sudden they go off and have their own experiences of awakening. And it happens. The naysayer is usually the one that comes back a month or two later, and he starts sending me all his videos and pictures.
You know what I just got?
And that's the way it works.
Because they've agreed to turn on.
But then the next step, but here's the next big step. Okay,
step.
we've seen all the pictures, but it isn't about them showing themselves so we can take pictures. That's just the first step. The next step is so they can start talking to us.
Well, that's why you're here.
Yes.
That's why you're here.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, we really can talk for another hour, and I want to thank you for being with us. Reach out to them, keep an eye out. Let us know what you get. We'd love to know what you get also, and I guess that's about it. So, guys, I want to really thank you for coming. Thank you.
Yep.
And
thank you.
And we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Yep.
See you soon,
Bye-bye.
Bill. Take care.
Bye-bye.